May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. Good morning, friends.
Good morning.
Wonderful to see you. I was talking to another dad at a soccer game the other day who, half serious, half kidding, said to me, my entire journey as a parent can be summed up in a single sentence: trying to get my kids to care. And I thought that was hilarious, and I also had this weird theological epiphany when he said this. I was like, wow, that kind of sums up the entire Bible also, trying to get my kids to care. There's such a difference between doing something because you have to do it, like telling your kids you have to do this, versus when they care about it. Because when they care about it, they prioritize it. And this, what I'm about to share with you, is probably one of the most true statements you've ever heard from the pulpit. It's just true about life. It's true about us, that we prioritize what we care about. It's just the way it is. We prioritize what we care about. If I care about something or someone, if it affects me, if it touches my life, if it advances or threatens what I care about or love, or who I care about and love, I'm going to prioritize it. You don't have to twist my arm. If I care about it, I'm going to prioritize it. Whether it has to do with my home or my family or my health or the health of a loved one, if it has to do with anything that touches on survival or financial stability, romance, faith, self-improvement, whatever it is, if it matters to me, if I care about it, then I'm going to give it my time. I'm going to give it my money. I'm going to give it my energy. I'm going to give it my sweat. I'm probably going to lose sleep over it at some point. I'm definitely going to be talking to my therapist about it at some point. Why? Because if it matters to me, I'm going to prioritize it. It's just the way it is. We're going to prioritize what we care about. And that also includes other things, like if I care too much about how people feel about me, then I might prioritize being a people pleaser. Or if I care too much about my body image, that's going to affect how I prioritize my life, or the fear of aging, or the feeding an addiction. We prioritize what we care about. And sometimes there's this disconnect where we tell ourselves we care about something, but how we spend our time and our money tells a different story. There's this quote by the American evangelist Billy Graham, who once said, "Give me 5 minutes with a person's checkbook, and I will tell you where their heart is." We prioritize what we care about. So if you can get someone to care about something, you can move them to action. Trying to get my kids to care. The Bible in a nutshell. And here's the thing. The dad at the soccer game and the God of the Bible have the same problem in common. It's the same problem. It's the same problem or challenge that all of us have anytime we're trying to get someone else to care about something that we care about. And to put it in the most simple and crass terms, if you want to get someone to care about something, you have to show them how it affects them, how it impacts their life. That's the problem. It's a part of being human. It is hard for me as a human being to naturally care about and prioritize things that I don't feel affect me. Last Sunday during the Adult Forum Hour, we had roundtable discussions in our parish hall about the toxic political polarization that's going on in our nation right now. And one of the questions that was open for discussion, it was just a question, and it was like, in your small group, talk about this. The question was, if you could sit down with someone from the other side of the political aisle in a completely safe and non-judgmental environment, and clearly this is a hypothetical question, right? So if you could sit across from someone and it's safe and it's not judgmental, what would you most wish for that person to understand? If you could just help them understand one thing and they were to get it, what is it that you wish they would understand? How many of us, honestly, how many of us wish we could just somehow get the other to see how this thing or this reality or this issue really matters? 2 days later, this past Tuesday, our Bishop, Marianne Buddy, basically answered this question, but she didn't do it hypothetically. She spoke directly to President Trump at the National Cathedral during the inaugural prayer service. And essentially what Bishop Marianne was doing is she was saying, if I could get you to understand one thing. How many of you heard the sermon or parts of the sermon? If I could get you to just understand one thing, this is what it would be. If I could get you to care about one thing. So obviously, Bishop Marianne had been working on this sermon for a while. That service was planned far in advance, that it was going to happen in the cathedral and she was going to be preaching. So she had time to think about, what is the one thing, if I could just communicate to the new president, one thing that I wish he would care about. And this is what it was for her. Mercy matters. But here's the eternal problem. Whether it's Donald Trump or any of our elected officials or our kids or you or me, it's the same thing, that if it doesn't affect me, it's hard to care. And as quick as most of us are to point fingers at how uncomfortable Donald Trump was sitting in the front row, or even maybe enjoy that little moment, I have this image of him sitting uncomfortably in that front pew as Bishop Marianne was speaking to him. And I'm going to be honest with you, I see myself. I see myself. How hard does God need to work to convince me to care? How hard does God need to work to convince me to have mercy? To really see that we are all connected somehow, and that it's not like that's their problem, that everything, all the suffering, all the brokenness in the world, it affects me. How hard does God have to work to convince me that it affects me? That when one suffers, all of us suffer. A couple of months ago, I was parked outside my kids' school, and I was waiting to pick one of them up, and there was this lady standing there. I'm in the car, she's there, and she's looking at me, and I'm on my phone. I look up, I'm like, oh, that's weird. She's like staring at me. And I look down my phone, and I look up at her again, and she's looking at me. I was like, that's so strange. But eventually, she kind of solved the mystery. She walked over to the window and knocked, and I rolled it down. And she goes, are you Uber Eats? And I was like, no. And then she just like went on and on, explaining to me all kinds of things about why she thought I was Uber Eats, and then telling me what meal she had ordered. I didn't care about any of that stuff, but she was just talking. What I didn't realize until my daughter gets in the car, and I was like, is that your teacher? She goes, oh, that's one of the administrators here. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, she thought I was Uber Eats, and Miriam goes, oh, that's racist. And I was like, oh my God, it didn't even occur to me. It was such a strange moment for me that didn't occur to me, because it's so obvious that it should have. But let's be honest, I kind of fit the stereotype, right? Like, I wasn't wearing a collar, FYI, like brown man sitting in a sedan, looking at his phone. Maybe that's my food. Thank you for laughing. Have you ever been stereotyped? It's like such a strange thing. But here's the thing, we all do it. We all do it. You might cringe at that happening to your rector, but we all do it. We all stereotype others. But here's the thing, and this I think is what I found a little bit strange, is that there's probably like 10 white kids at the school my kids go to. And especially if you're exposed to a diverse, multi-ethnic region like Washington, D.C., most of us, even though we stereotype, there's a little voice in the back that says, you know better. And that voice oftentimes interrupts before you say something like that. You know better. And that's what I'm hoping today. So let me tell you what I mean by this. Today is an opening sermon. Next month is Black History Month. And I'm preaching every other week, so I'm not preaching this coming Sunday, but I am on the 9th. And then I'm not preaching on the 16th, but I am the week after that. And I'm going to be focusing my sermons on the continuing work of doing racial equity, why it matters. We're not just going to do a nod to racial equity because it's Black History Month. We're going to talk about it. And I'm setting the stage with this very simple sermon today. And what I hope is that there's a part of us, a voice within us that says, you know better. That if there's any part of us that says, well, why do we talk so much about racial equity? You know, why do we talk so much about it? That there's a part that hopefully interrupts that says, you know what? When others are impacted by something, it affects us also. It's not just it doesn't affect me. Why are we talking about it? It's because if it affects others, it affects us. We know better. We know that that's true. Our faith has always been about that. But sometimes we slide into this kind of world of like, I don't want to prioritize it if I don't care about it. And today I want to just say, God doesn't have to work so hard to remind us. Paul today in the passage about one body, just read it again. When one part of the body suffers, the whole body suffers. He's working so hard to just communicate that we're all connected somehow. That even if it seems like the suffering of others doesn't affect you directly, that there is something deep within us that says, we know better. We know that's not true. It might seem like that, but when I stop to think about it, I know that's not true. When a person in our community or across the country is forcibly separated from their family and is deported, if I feel that that doesn't affect me somehow, I'm missing something. When the pandemic happened, this was one of the most sobering parts of the pandemic. It shattered the view that something can happen somewhere else in the world and it not affect us here. This virus just brought us face to face with the reality. We breathe the same air. We live in the same world. When someone is experiencing discrimination and does not have the rights that they deserve as a human being, and we think it doesn't affect us, we're missing something. So today is just the opening sermon. I want to close with a quote by the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. It's one of the most powerful quotes written from a letter from a Birmingham jail. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Let me read this quote, and then I'm going to close us with prayer. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Loving God, my prayer today is that when you look at all of your children and you are broken at how hard you have to keep working just to get us to care, that God, you could look at St. John's Norwood and feel a sense of relief and say, thank goodness somebody gets it.